Hey, welcome everyone to Through a Glass Darkly Radio. You are listening to United Public Radio, a production of. The intro music was Mark of the Doomslayer by Carl Casey at White Bat Audio. And today we have, so let me tell you a little bit about our guest, Mr. Edward Riordan. Edward Riordan began remote viewing in 1999 with a system that was an offshoot of CRV, that's Coordinate Remote Viewing for folks not in the know. He has since switched to Coordinate Remote Viewing, and as he finds it to be a better fit for his skills. In 2013, he trained with the highly respected and highly skilled former military remote viewer, Paul H. Smith. He has been a contracted associate of Transception Inc., an R&D company specializing in the exploration or exploitation of CRV and other methods to lawfully extract technology from the state of nature as a means of building, licensing, and enforcing its intellectual property, IP, portfolio of patents and copyrights. He served as associate counsel for the Institute for Neuroscience and Consciousness Studies, INACS, contributing to their remote viewing study group. He is the founder and host of Austin Remote Viewers. They meet up in group meetings bi-weekly at INACS in Austin, Texas, where they met from 2011 to 2015. In 2018, Edward joined the Crypto Viewing Group, producing highly relevant remote viewing works on a weekly basis alongside some of the top remote viewers in the private sector. And today he works or does a ton of work for the Future Forecasting Group, among a number of other pursuits. So with that, I'd like to welcome Edward Riordan.
Hey,
How you
Sean.
doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks so much for having me on the show. Congratulations on having a radio show, and that's very, very cool, man. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, such as it is, my friend. We're just kind of growing from scratch. But it's been great. It's been great. So the first two guests, we had Dr. John Brandenburg the first week. He was a plasma physicist. He's done a lot of work on Mars and kind of the death of Mars and things like that. If you're familiar with the Joe McMoneagle remote viewing of Mars, his scientific research on the composition of various isotopes of xenon on Mars is atypical from the rest of the solar system. It's actually consistent with places on Earth where they've detonated hydrogen bombs. So anyway, wow. you can kind of do your own come to your own conclusion on that. The second guest was Dr. David Morehouse, as you know, was a remote viewer in the Project Stargate program, along with one of the gentlemen who trained you was Paul H. Smith, who's also a member of that program. So you're kind of the second generation, the next generation of remote viewers, if you take remote viewing in a very strict definition of it, which was the process that was developed by Ingo Swann and SRI and all those folks. So,
I agree.
Given the introduction I gave you, what are you doing today? What kind of work with remote viewing are you focused on?
Well, as per the introduction, I started working with what was called crypto viewing back in 2018. That group has now changed the name, and we're the Future Forecasting Group now. Mm-hmm. And so we do projects every week. Every single week we put out remote viewing projects. So that's a full schedule there with those guys. In between that, I do, what I call my vacation targets, which are interesting targets that a buddy of mine will select for me. I don't have any time frame on those. I do them as I do, and I'm done when I'm done. I'm doing my exploratory remote viewing work, studying my brain, the process and how my brain processes the quote unquote remote viewing stimulus. So it's just busy constantly with remote viewing. It's been remote viewing has been the guiding force in my life since for almost 25 years now. So it is the guiding force. So that's what I do all the time.
Now, I kind of gave folks the cliff notes on how you got into this program, or kind of into remote viewing, not necessarily a program. Can talk us through that journey? Like, how did you suddenly decide that you wanted to basically dedicate or devote your life to it?
Well, the first time I heard about remote viewing was in 1996. This was a year after the program had been declassified, and
Hmm.
a guy named Jeff Schnabel put out a documentary about it, and it was on Discovery Channel, Learning Channel, one of those. But I recorded it on VHS. I was already interested in these, in the realms of these things already for a long time. So when I saw that documentary and all the main players were in there, Ingo Swann was in there, Mel Riley was in there, Lynn Buchanan was in, Ed Dames was in there. I think Hal Puthoff might have even been in there, but they had all these guys in there. And
By the way, random question, because might be able to establish some context you might not know. So when they showed Mel Riley, how did they introduce him? Do you recall? Was he
Mel
wearing
Riley was he
like a
was
Native American headdress,
they did
sort
show him
of?
with a Native American
Uh
headdress
huh.
on,
And
which
when they showed General Stubblebine, did they kind of like show him in some like purple haze sort of?
probably I think so.
Yeah, yeah. So
Uh,
just a little bit of background potentially. Again, I don't know if this is the case, but Schnabel has kind of a reputation for writing these books that discredit all sorts of different topics. And there is a belief, and I will just say belief because I can't confirm or deny it, that he is a member of a set of operations that are called strategic communications. And strategic communications are something the intelligence community uses to shape narratives
mm,
and things like that. So if you're wondering why Mel Riley it was first shown instead of in a suit and tie, he's kind of like smoking a pipe, and I don't know if he's smoking a pipe or not, but he's like wearing a Native American headdress, and
yeah,
also you have Stubblebine and kind of the purple haze. It's made to look like they're crazy, right?
they did the documentary starts out and they're playing Mel, as memory serves, Mel's driving his truck down a road, and I guess Schnabel's with him or whatever, and they're playing a song, Kitty Well, I think it's a Kitty Wells song, like an old Kitty Wells song. But yeah, they kind of make it out like they're one flew over the cuckoo's nest. But
Mm-hmm.
the documentary
That's that's not a
itself,
mistake. That's not a
yeah,
mistake, right?
I'm sure it's not. I mean,
Right.
I think they had to kind of maybe do it that way because of the content of the show. But other than that, I'd say they portrayed them quite well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in they kind of let you know what the individuals, in my opinion anyway, what the individuals might have been a little more interested in. Like Ed Dames was a UFO guy, you know. Mel Riley had an experience with Native American when he was younger and changed the course of his
Yep.
life, and so that was a big part of his life. Lynn Buchanan was, how do you go into this crazy realm and maintain a marriage and a normal life? You know, that was kind of the gist of him. And then Stubblebine and some of those guys, they were like more hardcore military guys saying we want, we were going into these realms. The Russians were doing it. We were going too. And but it was such a fascinating introduction to this. It made all that realm more real to me.
Mm-hmm.
And like I say, I was already into psychic things and tarot cards and psychic readings and doing all that kind of stuff. But it took a couple years before anything was available. So in '99, Ed Dames had a VHS training course available, and that was the only thing that I knew that was out there. I didn't know anybody was giving it training. I just didn't. I had no clue. That was the only thing I could have access to, and it was a very crude start, man. It was rough for a long time. And then I moved out here, and I met all these CRV people out here. Unbeknownst to me, Hal Puthoff's office is about 2 miles away from my house. I didn't know that. When I moved here, I had no idea. I got to go and hang out with Hal Puthoff and meet him and stand in front of one of Ingo Swann's paintings in his office. Paul Smith was nice enough to take me over there. And but then I wanted to get more into the CRV style per Ingo, because I was reading a lot of Ingo's stuff, studying a lot of Ingo's stuff, and getting my mind a little clearer into what he was doing as opposed to Ed Dames' interpretation of it. He changed some things around and kind of Ed Dames did. And I
Mhm.
wanted to get out of that and more into the what Ingo was trying to do. And that was a big shift. But moving here to Austin, man, there was a lot of CRV people that I got in contact with, and that I started the Austin Remote Viewers Meetup group probably 2 weeks after I moved here. And unbeknownst to me, I couldn't believe it. I had the first meeting, and like 11 people showed up. I couldn't
Where did you come
believe it.
from when before Austin? Where were you coming from at that time?
We lived in Arizona. I lived in
Okay.
Arizona for 16 years. Yeah,
So
and
you were doing it all by yourself, just kind of trying to figure it out in your lonesome.
completely. Yeah, totally. I did go and get some, put my butt in a chair, with Ed Dames and his then training assistant FM Bonsall in early 2002 for just a weekend workshop. And then after that, I continued on for about 10 months with a remote training with FM, just to kind of keep it going. And then after that, I was completely on my own till I moved here. So we're talking 10 years of.
When you say remote training, though, this is back in the day, so you're probably maybe getting instructions on email and telephone calls. Was that how it was done?
I had to send him my sessions through a fax machine.
At least it wasn't the mail.
Dude, it could if it was before that, it would have been through the mail. Yeah, it was very crude, man. It was a long time ago. People really need to understand how fortunate people are today to have
Yeah.
access to all this stuff. A lot of it for free. You can get all kinds of training. You can get the manuals. You can get all that kind of stuff. Videos. I mean, I got almost 500 videos showing live remote viewing examples.
And you mean like VHS videos? Well, I mean, sorry, let me step back. You're talking about right now. You're talking now YouTube videos, but back then,
Yeah,
did you have to use anything with like VHS videos or
it was
anything
a
like that?
VHS training program. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I didn't have a TV. I had a computer, and I had to get a video card that I could screw in a little coax cable on the back and put the other one into the VHS player and play the video through my big CRT monitor, which I lost like 80% of the color from the video. So I'm like trying to figure out what he's writing on the board because the video quality was terrible. But that is what was available at the time, and I'm glad I had it. It got me started. It got me started, and that's what was really really cool about it. So it was a kind of a wild west thing. Yeah, and I had nobody out there to work with, or the only thing I had was I had some friends of mine from the job I had. I said, "Can you? I need you guys to pick me some targets." So they would write down something, Lake Michigan, on a piece of paper, put it in an envelope, seal it, and I put a target ID number on there. So there was not even a feedback photo. It was just something written on a piece of paper. It was rough, but at the time, it was really cool and exciting. You know, I can
What
look
were the other
back on it
people?
fondly.
What were the other people in your life saying when you were kind of obsessing over this stuff? Because I mean, it's really. I mean, you really don't have like daily feedback. It's kind of like,
Well, at
well,
that
maybe you do.
at the time, I was already heavily involved with psychic things and training and paranormal things and Reiki and I was that was what my life was. That's what my entire life was. And so when I took up remote viewing, it was just okay. Yeah, that's what he's doing now. For the small clique of people that I had, I didn't have a huge group of people. I had a small clique of people who, were interested in the things that I was interested in. So it was just another thing that I was doing to them. You
Okay, so you
Otherwise, I didn't tell anybody about anything.
all right, so you moved to Austin, and this is circa 2000 something.
2011, 2011, yeah.
Oh, 2011.
Hmm.
Okay, so the internet's gotten a little bit better. Probably not quite the Zoom, not really out yet. You might have Skype maybe at that time, or maybe it's yeah, it's around
Probably,
Skype.
probably.
Yeah.
I didn't use it. You know. What was cool was that once I moved here and I made the really good decision to start the meetup group because I wanted to meet people and stuff like that in a new town. But it really took off, and I ran that for God 5 years, I think.
Hmm.
Sometimes it was every week, sometimes it was every other week. Um, so it was really great, and I met all kinds of people. That's how I met Paul Smith and some of the other people out here who um, really helped me with get my mind more into a CRV style of doing remote viewing, and it changed my remote viewing. And that's where I met Jerry Hearthcock, who the guy you mentioned, transception. He's a
Hmm.
engineer and a patent holder, and um, he came to one of my meetups,
Hmm.
and he had a video that he asked if he could show in a DVD, and it was a video of him remote viewing. He had a monitor and somebody videotaped it. That was the first time that I watched from the beginning to the end, the entire session. And that was the first time I had seen anybody do that. Prior to that, we were talking about that Schnabel documentary.
Hmm.
There's a little clip in there where you have Ed Dames monitoring Mel Riley, and Mel is, remote viewing. I studied that 20 seconds of video over and over and over again because I was like, what is going on here? How is he doing this? And and that was all that was in there. I was like, man, I wish I had access to the entire session that he had so I could study him going through this process. So Jerry had shown that, and that inspired me right away. So I did some work for him. He videotaped it. He showed me the videos. I watched myself remote viewing, completely changed everything. I started videotaping and then got my YouTube. I started posting my stuff on
When you
YouTube.
said that changed everything, it sounds like there were two turns. The first is when you saw someone else doing it for the first time after having learned it, and that seemed a light bulb goes off in your head. And then the second time, after you record yourself and you watch yourself, like a second light bulb went through. Can you? I know it's hard to explain, but what kind of transformation happened? Like, what changed in your perspective when you did it that way?
The change is that when you're remote viewing and you're in a part of that session where an actual remote viewing is taking place, and it's over, you're looking at it like on a video, so you already know what the feedback is, um, and everything. So when I'm looking at that video, knowing the feedback, and I'm going, wow, that's where I was in that moment. It was a completely different experience watching it, because when you're remote viewing, you're not in the moment, man. You're in the second. I mean, you're in
Mm-hmm.
it, and the next thing you know, it's over. And it's like, hey, I got, and then a couple of days later, it's hard to even go back and remember the session without looking through the pages of all the data. So going and watching the video of it from start to finish, it was a completely different experience of watching myself go through that experience of when that drawing came out, and holy crap, so it was very, very interesting to watch. I'd say that I learned more about the process of remote viewing by watching that than pretty much anything, pretty much anything
Mm-hmm.
else, because I just wasn't, you know, taught anything like that. So watching it, especially watching myself, I was like, oh, that's what happens there. That's what happened there. That's what happened there. And it was just like, a whole line of things. So then I've decided that if only I had this 10 years ago, it could have saved me years of frustration. So I
Mm.
decided to start posting my stuff on YouTube, full sessions, start to finish, and that had never been done before. No one had ever done that. They'd show little clips here, little clips there, but the entire thing, start to finish, and I didn't edit, and that upset some people. They were like, "Can't you edit this down? This is like an hour and 20 minutes."
Yeah, everybody
Watching,
wants everything
they
perfectly
were they're like,
packaged,
"This is
right?
what like watching paint dry." They were criticizing me, and I said, "Absolutely not, because this is exactly what happened. And if it was me, I would want to see every second of it, nothing edited." So I didn't edit any of them. I put them all up, the entire thing, and I'm still putting those videos up.
So what
My
specific
focus
website,
has changed, but
which specific YouTube channel can they find that on so
it's
folks
my
can,
name, Edward Riordan.
okay, at YouTube or,
Yeah,
well, sorry.
yeah. If they go into
Okay.
YouTube, just type in Edward Riordan remote viewing, and they'll find me.
Okay. All right. So when you first started doing this on your own, you obviously believed it was possible to remote view, but was there a singular moment where you were like, holy crap, this is real? Or was it a series of moments that, because there's a difference between belief and knowledge, right? When did you know it was real, like in your gut?
Well, I I knew it was real when I watched that documentary before I'd even tried a remote viewing session. By looking at those guys and listening to Ingo Swann and seeing Mel Riley, draw that thing, I knew it was real as soon as I saw it. And so when I started practicing it and doing it myself, my motivation started changing, as far as the purpose for why I was interested in it, which
Mm-hmm.
was that, I was starting to get kind of disillusioned with a lot of things that I was doing, before that. And remote viewing was, um, in my mind, something that was an attempt to be as pure as possible when perceiving something, via remote viewing, because we're blind to the target, as part of the protocol. That eliminates a lot of the preconceived notions about things, and I was coming off of many years of in spiritual realm kind of stuff, and getting a bit disillusioned with quite a bit of it. So remote viewing was, I wanted the truth. I want something real. I want to be able to go through this experience, get some feedback, and know if something actually did happen. You know what I mean? I didn't want to fool myself. I wanted something real. I wanted to experience something real, and that's what the blind protocol and the whole deal,
Mm-hmm.
provided. It provided that. It still does, even though, the whole, there's still some shady realms in there, as far as the potential for a remote viewer to get swept up in a fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
That is it. That doesn't mean it doesn't happen. It is still a possibility, and that's an argument that I still argue about that, even
How
with
do
my
you
teammates.
how do you prevent yourself, or I shouldn't say prevent, but how do you minimize the possibility or potential for your imagination to crowd out your perception of perception of something that's really out there?
Well, the I'll put it in a couple different categories of answers. In the CRV realm, they have, protocols in there to where you can attempt to put those imaginary things or over analytical things in a column and go back to perception only, and not, getting a clear mental image and that kind of thing. So there
It's
there
like,
are
say, if you see something that looks like a truck and you say, "Oh, it looks like a truck," that's you would put that in the bucket of analytical overlay. Is kind of what you're saying, right?
Well,
Could be a truck, but
you
you
would
have to be
get
careful about it.
you could get perceptions of something is moving, it's heavy, it's rolling, and then that can bring associative memory association of a truck and that kind of thing. And so yeah, so then there's a place for that kind of stuff, to be put in as far as the structure goes, to help you to recognize when that's happening and get back to the describing the perceptual stuff. But that's as far as like CRV goes. What I have
Mhm.
done in my own personal work of exploratory work and how my brain is processing these types of stimulus, what parts of my brain are getting stimulated by this input, um, and how my brain is processing this information. In that, the whole explanation of it begins to change as to what could be happening and what part of the brain is making that happen, and how does that work as far as connecting to memories, um, completing circuits in the neural nets, or not allowing that to happen, and allowing the neurons to remain open and continue moving forward in the brain, get into a conceptual area of the brain. There's a lot more to it than just it's AOL. Put it in that column. There's a lot more to it to help the viewer to understand what's going on. But as far as what's real and what is not real, what I can say is that there are times in a remote viewing session where I can say, and I have said it, there's something about this target is not real. It's not true, and I get the feedback, and it's something that's like, that's goofy, that's like nutty stuff, that's fake, and then you begin to categorize the feeling of what is real, and there
Mm.
are certain qualities to certain perceptions that, for me, I have a kind of a list of what those things are, and a couple different techniques that I've developed for myself, to help me to get a better sense of what is real, or I will call it an actual remote viewing is taking place. Because just because you do a remote viewing session doesn't mean a remote viewing took place. Um, but it takes a lot of dedication to get to the point of being able to recognize the quality of a perception that is real, and being able to build the confidence levels of what is real, and as opposed to what is imagination, or you've gotten lost. Memory comparator has come up, and now you're just describing that, and the remote viewing has ended. you know
Let's put a pin in that because I want to talk about that in the second hour, kind of the biological basis of, not basis, but the mechanisms of remote viewing. But before we get to that, as you consider the probably hundreds to thousands of targets, well, that's another. There's always terminology too. Target is a very military Latin
I call
terminology.
it a range of time and space. So I
Okay.
went through and started. After all those years, and I started to get kind of disillusioned with people as well as their systems, and I started to understand that remote viewing protocols are really the way that individual remote views, and they've back engineered how they do it, and you may find some people that perceive things similar to the way they do, or maybe really like they do, and they do really well with that system. And you may have another system that is a back engineer of how that person perceives things, and some people resonate with that and they do well with that system. But I started to kind of get a little. I started to understand that everyone has their own way of doing things. There's no one way to do it. People's brains and their minds are different, and so one just because it works for one person, it may not work for the other person, as well as the language that is used. So I started looking at, why is it called a target? I kind of
Hmm.
get why it's called a target, but what is it actually? And I spent a lot of time contemplating that. and I finally just brought it down to, in my mind, the base of it, which is it's a range of time and space that the viewer is attempting to perceive. And I think target is kind of a strange word for that. I still use it because it's so entrained, but in my mind, it is a range of time and space. That's what it is to me. To me, that's what it is.
So with various ranges of time and space that you've been given, so coordinates, you've been given lots of coordinates, right? Which is what this range of time and space would identify. And they're not really necessarily real coordinates. They just symbolize
An
that.
ID, yeah, a set
Yeah.
of random numbers and letters to indicate that there is something for me to go in remote
Yeah.
view.
A software program would call it like a hash table or something like that,
Yeah.
right? Where they kind of randomize. Okay. Throughout your career, what would you say has been the most consequential hit that you've had? And by hit, I mean you were extremely accurate on the target, and it was it was useful in some way to a client or yourself, maybe.
I would say probably my what I call my ominous feeling sessions that I put out in November of 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And those sessions were based off of a strange type of sensation that I had experienced right here, right where I'm in this room that I'm in. And um, it was a strange thing. And I decided to use remote viewing to try to flush out what that was. And I'm glad I did because I could have easily have said, "Ah, that was weird, on with the day," and then just leave. Sean, it was a fraction of a second away from me not doing those sessions. I could have
Mm-hmm.
easily have just turned and gone on with my day, and I would have never have done those. So I'm very glad that I did those. Um, but what it immediately turned into was a virus situation with a very specific look
Mm-hmm.
to it in the veins, in the blood, in the fibers, uh, in the blood. And then on sessions later and locations and people and all the other stuff.
And to be very clear, this stuff is uploaded to YouTube, and it was uploaded in 2017, and it's
It
there
was
right now,
uploaded. It
and
was
people can
uploaded.
go and
Yeah,
verify this. Anyway, people,
yeah,
I think people know where you're headed, but we can be explicit without
yeah,
being. You don't need to
yeah.
say the C word, but you can probably get away with the P word. Pandemic,
Well, it
right?
was one of those things where I did them and I put them up. I put them up there right after I did them, and even at my own scrutiny, because it's like you don't have any. I have no feedback for this. I probably look like an idiot, you know. But 2 years later, um, the feedback started to come in, you know. And then a year and a half after that, more feedback came in, and then a year after that, more feedback came in. So that's one of those things where the feedback is still coming in. So
Mm.
as far as significant ones, that was pretty significant in there. Not my favorite one, but I'd
You
say
know, but
pretty
no, but
significant.
I think that accomplished the objective for something interesting, right? I think that was extremely. When you said the feedback continues to come in, and you've been very careful, and I appreciate that. We'll have to continue to be very careful about how you characterize it. Some of the stuff that continues to come in on that particular topic, has it come to pass yet, or are there aspects of it that are still kind of in the wind, so to speak?
The final page of that session of an individual who released this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I kind of characterized it in that page as it was like his pet, releasing it into the world. Um, I'd say, a lot of speculation. um, who that could be. But as far as a uh, feedback for that, it's still to be determined. I'd
Was
say.
he someone who had a British accent, or was he someone who kind
Don't
of
know.
talked like this?
I don't know. I don't know. It's funny because when I did that, and I'm drawing it, and I probably made the features of the face a bit foggy, probably for my own
Hmm.
safety, without really understanding it at the time. Because some of the stuff that can come through, you do have to be careful about publishing some of this stuff. Because what if you hit on something that is a real hot topic for the kind of people that don't want you putting that kind of hot topic out.
Let's
um,
explore that. Let's explore that. Actually, has there ever been anything that you did where you got attention from, either a government or corporation, or someone reached out to you and said, either can you look into that a little bit more, or someone started asking you questions, or just reached out to you in general?
well, that session, along with the QAnon sessions, was how I got invited onto the, at the time, crypto viewing group. The kind of the man behind the scenes, who came up with that idea, who knows a lot of things, uh, found found my work interesting, and particularly that project. Um,
Is this person out
be,
in
and
the
it's
open, or
no,
or are they just kind of behind the scenes? Okay, I'm not going
it's
to
a
push
behind
you
yeah, it's a
for
behind the
obvious
scenes
reasons.
guy.
Right.
And you know, before that whole thing started, by the way, in my conversations in 2018 was, oh yeah, your stuff is very interesting. Particularly that one is particularly interesting, and this was before that particular thing happened. So yeah, that one got me. Um, uh, you know, it's it is what it is, man. That's what happened.
Has there been anything you've done since that kind of gave you the ominous feeling,
Yeah.
since the November 17th, or
Oh yeah.
2017? Sorry.
Yeah, the virus thing came up a couple times after that, and I have had some sessions even with crypto viewing, and now future forecasting group that couldn't get published. So I just say,
When you said
okay,
couldn't be published,
okay,
what does that mean?
it could
I.e.,
draw
you
some
couldn't up
unwanted attention. you know,
so you couldn't
could draw
upload
some
it to the
unwanted
internet.
attention. Yeah, yep.
Could you upload it to your patrons, or was that also
No, no. I
verboten?
was advised, and I'll take the advice. This we can't publish this. It's so all right. I get it. I get it. There are people who, if you've heard of a woman named Prudence Calabrese or Calabrese, she was a woman who became popular in the remote viewing world in the early 2000s. And she was in a documentary that came out in, I think, 2004.
Hmm.
And the guy it was a British guy who did the documentary, and I think he was at one of the IRVA conferences, International
Hmm.
Viewers Association conference. And this woman was there. She was there, and she went with those guys and the filmmakers, and they were asking her questions about some stuff, and she said some things that literally, uh, she kind of disappeared. She's talked about a terrorist attack coming up in England, and that was before the March 11th, 2004 or whatever, terrorist attack on the trains or whatever it was in England.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
literally, she disappeared. I'm not saying she's dead. I don't know. Nobody knows. She said, "I'm out." So yeah, I don't want to have the Men in Black kicking my door
I
in, man. I
I
don't want to go
doubt
disappearing.
there's a guy. He's not necessarily a trained remote viewer, but he has premonitions and dreams. His name's Christopher Robinson. He worked for a good 30, 40 years for MI6 and MI5. And he had a pretty good arrangement with them. So I imagine whatever happened to her, if they're not completely incompetent, right, they probably just took her out of the public eye and she's probably living pretty well, doing good
That's what I
work.
think. I
I
think
would
they
think,
probably said,
right?
"You're coming
Yeah.
to work for us, or you're in big trouble." And she probably.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't. I
And,
don't
you know,
know. That's my.
right.
That's
Right.
what I
Right.
always thought. She's working for
Right. We're just
them, and you never see
speculating.
her again.
Yeah. We're just speculating. Right.
I'm
All
speculating
right.
totally.
There's somebody just I just flashed something. Now I'm really intrigued. I have to ask. Okay, so Sooty S is saying in a recent session, Edward saw a mantis and a snake. Regarding the snake, he said, "I am aware of him. I feel it is someone close to him professionally." Is it? You don't have to answer it, but first, let's give the audience like the context behind that because, well, if you can talk about it, because I'm curious now too.
That was a session. That's a couple years old. That was for crypto viewing, and the target. I got to try to remember what it was. I think it might have been um, London in 2024 or 2025. I think it might have been something like that. And I did a long session on that, and that was at the end of the session was where that kind of strange kind of um, symbology was coming through,
Mm-hmm.
where you had the someone being represented as the snake or the snake class, and then you had a strategist with the mantis, and they were going to go into a duel or a fight together. They were going to fight each other with the ideas of these two things. The viper and the strategist. Going at each other, and it was symbolic in nature. And
Mm-hmm.
who it was, I'm not sure who those individuals would be. No one that I know, unless maybe one of them's Putin and one of them's you know
I mean, there's no
somebody else.
strategists in the
I have
United
no
States
idea.
anymore, so I don't know. I don't know if there's.
Yeah,
I mean,
very
Putin's the
symbolic.
strategist, right? Putin's the
It's very
strategist. The
symbolic.
snake would be. I don't know. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
it's up for interpretation. I think that's what the target was, though, but I can't fully remember. If it was London, maybe then the snake would be maybe King Charles or one of his minions. They
Hmm.
are they are the dragon class, the red
Reptilian
dragon.
type.
They are the red dragon.
Oh, is that when you say they are the red dragon? Is that just what they show up in your remote viewing?
No, that's
That's
on
the
his
symbology for
crest.
them.
That's on Charles' crest, the red
Interesting.
dragon.
I wonder who the mantis would be. Well, anyway, we could probably go on and on about this. So I want to ask you this one too. Has Edward and his group remote viewed the future of Asia to see if there will be a war?
Not Asia. I don't think we have gotten anything related to Asia outside of cryptocurrency stuff
Mm-hmm.
related to Asia. The other reference I had to Asia was back in 2019. It was probably September of 2019. The target was the catalyst for the switchover to a digital economy. What would be the
Mm,
catalyst for the switchover to a digital economy? And in that session, I had the Great Wall of China, and I drew the spike protein. And I didn't know anything about a spike protein. That's what I saw. That's what I drew. We're going through the debrief, and I'm getting to that part with the strange looking, thing. Spike. We can look back at it now and say, yeah, spike protein. But I didn't know, and I was just like, I'm sorry, guys. I think I missed this one, man. I felt bad. I was like, I think I've screwed this one up. I didn't, whatever, man. It doesn't have anything to do with money. It's just some weird looking thing. And we forgot about it. We forgot about those sessions because we're every week we're doing new ones. We don't, ponder on what we've done. We're on to the next thing. So then the big thing hits the end of 2019, the beginning of 2020. That thing that we don't want to talk about or mention. And I'd say probably about March or so of 2020, I went
Hmm.
and was looking back through some of the old sessions, and I looked back at that one, and by that time, everybody knew what a spike protein looked like, and I almost fell off my chair. I said, "Guys, look, I can't believe it. We uh, we had it in here." And the relevance of that was that you had the World Economic Forum people like Klaus Schwab saying that the virus thing would be the catalyst for bringing in the digital economy of the fourth industrial revolution. So he was actually saying it.
Yeah, you eat the
So
bugs and be happy.
that's correct.
That Klaus Schwab. Right, right, right.
That's the guy. That's the guy. So it had relevance. So yeah, that thing has come up for me a couple of times, and so yeah, it's kind of won't leave me alone.
Well, there hasn't. Well, there. You had COVID, and then right now you're having a decoupling, kind of a de-dollarization of the world global economy, and that's a little alarming. The problem is I don't think people want to transact in yuan. So the next best thing, or actually probably a better option, is some basket of currencies tied, unfortunately, to a digital currency. So
Yeah,
when the Chinese figure out that their currency is not attractive for reasons that they don't necessarily obey international law, things like that, the next shoe to drop is probably exactly what you're talking about. And the reason it would scare me, and I'm sure it probably scares you, is you can maintain much tighter control over people if they have
100%.
digital currency.
100%. Yeah. You have no anonymity anymore. Yeah.
And if
That's
you
that's
want people to
been
stop
coming
eating
up. That's
meat,
been coming
they
up.
just shut off your currency. You can't. Oh, sorry, can't buy that meat packet.
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah. Control system. Yeah. Yeah, we've
All
been
right. So
covering
what
that. We've been covering that topic for a couple of years in crypto viewing and in future forecasting group, and
is your
doing
sense
using
is?
remote viewing to kind of monitor the evolution of this thing.
Let's see another one. Can you see that, Edward?
Let's see.
I'll read it. I'll read it
Yeah,
because
please do.
we are in the radio. Edward has maintained in sessions what seemed to be a frequency or signal that goes out. Once he wrote, "This would be a quote. This would be a good time to be underwater or in a bath." Could he elaborate at all? Does that does that resonate for you? Do you remember that? I know you do a
I
million
don't
of these
remember
things,
that.
so it's hard to remember.
I don't remember that one. I don't remember that one. If Sudie remembers that one, she may have to remind me because I'm telling you, we've done so much remote viewing, and when we go into the debriefs, it's so in the moment. So if I say something in a session or I say something in a debrief, we're on to the next thing. And
By the
it's
way,
very difficult to remember all those things.
for folks who are just tuning in, I'm talking to remote viewer Edward Riordan, and you're listening to United Public Radio. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I got to do that 3 times. It's like
Sure.
clicking my feet like Cinderella.
It's so funny
All right.
because the same thing with either me or any of the other guys in future forecasting. We can never remember our sessions. We have to always go back and look at them again and remind ourselves what was in them because we do so many of them.
Okay, so Sudi got back. So it was tied to a solar type event. Uh, I don't know if it's Betelgeuse or Betelgeuse. Guys, I don't.
I call it Betelgeuse. I don't think that the French say Beetlejuice.
Yeah, it's an American thing. And then Enki and Leo.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah,
think.
yeah. Okay, yeah. That was whoa. That was one of my vacation targets that I did, and the target
Okay, you got to
was Betelgeuse.
explain exactly what this thing is because most people or just trying to drive home. They're like Enliki and or Enliki
Okay,
and
okay.
Enlil.
I'll
I
give
don't
you
know
the
if you've
very
talked
very
about them.
condensed version because it's a very big
Yeah.
topic. But um, my friend Dustin Newcomb, I've been working with him for 10 years. He would pick a target, set up the project for me. I do the remote viewing. I do the videos. I put them up. And I call those my vacation targets. Because I can take my time and go wherever I want. He picked the QAnon target was his. Xenon 1 dark matter detector was his. Earth's core was his target. A lot of them were his. So the interesting thing is, I finished the project in December, just a couple of months ago, and it was Betelgeuse. He picked that.
Hmm.
But the interesting thing was he picked that target for me originally in January of 2020, and I did a couple of sessions, and I wasn't happy with any of the sessions, and I said, "Scrap it. I don't like. My remote viewing is crap. Scrap the project. I'm not happy with this." So he scrapped it. Unbeknownst to me, in I think September of 2023, I said, "Hey man, I'm ready you got anything in mind?" He says, "Yeah, sure." Sends me target ID. It's that. I go through the entire session. I get done. He gives me the feedback, and I'm like, "Oh wow, that's pretty well. I'm going to start doing my research." And he says, "I gave this target to you before." I said, "What? What are you talking about?" He said, "January of 2020, originally set the target up, but you scrapped it because you didn't like the remote viewing." I said, "Wow, that's really interesting." But here's why that's interesting. When I got the feedback and I started doing the research, this was in the beginning of December of last year, 2023. I do a search for Betelgeuse. First thing that comes up is that on December 12th of last year, a comet was going to go between the Earth and the star Betelgeuse, which is in the Orion constellation,
Yeah, it's like the
and it
bottom right corner or something
is
like that,
the
or
big one. It's
maybe.
a big
Yeah,
bright one on the
it's a
left
red.
hand
It's
side.
a red giant, isn't it? A red giant? I can't
Yeah,
remember.
well, the original reason why he gave me that as a target was to see if I would be talking about a supernova. He was like, "Is this thing?"
Hmm.
He wanted to know if it was going to go supernova. That was one of the reasons, or one of the part of the tasking was to see if it would go supernova. But so it's beginning of December. I do my research, and lo and behold, 10 days out from the time I start doing my research is when this comet is going to go in front of the Earth, in between Earth and Betelgeuse, and it was going to block out the star for 5 to 15 seconds. Just a one in a bazillion chance that could happen.
Hmm.
You know, one in a bazillion chances that could happen. And when I told Dustin, he had no idea. He had never heard of that. So I was like, "This is really strange." I scrapped the project. I didn't know what the target was back in 2020, but I scrapped it. We do it again now, and I get the feeling right before this event is going to happen. So I was like, "That's weird, man. What are the odds of that? That's really strange." So in the way he sets them up, he'll have a list of sub cues for the targets, and I like that because it gives me a lot of ranges, a lot of places to go and experience. So in this one, it was the viewers to perceive if this star is going to go supernova in whatever period of time, and then some sub cues. One of the sub cues was the influence that this star has had on humanity in the past, in the present, and in
Hmm.
the future.
Interesting.
The bulk of my sessions dealt with a lot of that influence because as I started doing my research into what cultures worship this star as a god, the most interesting one to me was Babylon and its worship of that star, and the god of in their pantheon of that star was called Enlil, Enlil. I think it's the brother or the sister of Enki. So they're in the
Hmm.
same Babylonian family there. And so that set me off on a whole tangent of things to research about Babylon. And it started to remind me of some of the imagery that I had been seeing in real time happening now, particularly the some of the imagery in the Commonwealth Games ceremonies from 2022 in Birmingham, England, that was hosted by then Prince Charles, that had imagery of the slave woman, pulling in this giant bull, a giant steel bull, which in Babylonian could be Baal or it could be Moloch. Has a lot of bull symbology in there. These women were the slave of this creature, and also imagery of Babylon, the tower in the ceremony. It was a tower. It
Hmm.
was all it was all digital, but it's on fire. It's in flames, and the people all come together. These Commonwealth people, and they put the flames out, and the tower is now completed again. So I'm looking at that, and I'm looking at the Tower of Babel. Tower of Babel. The story is they're trying to build a tower to heaven to apotheosis themselves, become with the gods. God gets angry, smashes the tower, confuses them with into 72 languages, and disperses them across the earth. 72 languages. There's a person in the ceremony for the Commonwealth Games who gets up and says, "We have brought together representatives of all 72 nations of the Commonwealth." So then I'm going, maybe there's something more going on here. Maybe,
Right. Maybe there's a reason
maybe
there's only 72 members of the Commonwealth because there's more countries than 72.
there
Right.
were 72 there, and she specifically said 72. And so the other reference to 72 that I found right at the same time was in the rotunda of the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. There's a painting. It's called The Apotheosis of George Washington. And it's got a, uh, a portal of 72 stars or 72 pentagrams. And through that portal is George Washington, deified as a god sitting on a throne with all these other deities around him in clouds. So they have been apotheosized. They have been attained god status. And I was like, what is going on here? So then I was like, that's pretty interesting. And then we got this comet going in front of Betelgeuse on the 12th of December. So I was like, what's going on the 12th of December? The 12th of December was the final day of COP28, and with
Mm.
King Charles being the keynote speaker. So there was another reference to Charles in there as well. So I started thinking maybe King Charles sees himself as the king of the new Babylon. Maybe I'm just theorizing. I'm not saying that that's true. But as I'm going through all this, and my thought processes are just eating it up because it's so tasty, you know, I started thinking maybe Charles was the king of the new Babylon. He's putting the tower back together and he's getting the 72 nations. But, it was all starting to piece together. It was fascinating. It
I'm
was
gonna
fascinating.
add a bit of a non. Well, it's not a non sequitur, but it's tangentially related to remote viewing. Are you familiar with Steve Mera, the
No.
paranormal researcher?
Mm-mm.
So he's done 40 years of paranormal research. He was also involved in the skull experiments where they were running seances and uh, basically made contact with these entities and started. It got to the point where they could materialize and objects, dematerialize objects. They would they could you could remove or you would they had sealed film like Kodak film. I don't know if it was Kodak, maybe something like that. That was not in a camera, and they could imprint pictures on that film. Like they would pull this stuff out of factory wrap, and it would have so lots of weird, crazy stuff. So when you started talking about Babylon and symbols of Babylon, he he's come closer from the kind of the paranormal realm and linking it with the UAP phenomena. So like a lot of this stuff is not bleeds over. It's not discrete nuts and bolts. There's also kind of a non-physical aspect to it. Well, one of the things he investigates is, somewhere in the middle. There's a physical phenomena in the UK which related to poltergeists, but they're physical poltergeists. It's like the dogmen phenomena. That is related to a specific Babylonian demon. Anyway, he's had all these paranormal experiences all his life, and when he's kind of moving in the right path, like synchronicities, everything's going
Yeah.
great. But
Yeah.
if he starts kind of barking up the wrong tree, he starts to get so he claims, right? I can't verify it, but he has a lot of these experiences. He woke up one night because I asked him, "Is there any thing you've been investigating where this you started to get pushback?" And he said, "Yes, Babylonian demons, ancient
Yeah.
Sumerian demons."
Yeah.
So he woke up one night and there were arms wrapped around him, and he was like struggling to break free. And his wife, who normally wakes up at the drop of a pin, was just out. And as you know, when he woke up the next morning, he called his colleague Barry Fitzgerald and to tell him what had happened. And before he could even start talking, he's just like, "Did something really strange happen to you last night? Because this so something paranormal happened to him at the same time." But the only point of this story is there's something to this kind of Babylonian iconography and things like that
I agree.
this kind of spurred. So
I
anyway,
agree.
somebody's saying 72 races resulting from Noah.
That's right. Yeah. Yep. There's several different 72 references. I put them in the video. I can't remember. I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, it's a lot of symbology. It's a rabbit hole that you can jump down, and wow, it is fascinating.
Oh, let's see. Hypothetically, if we wanted to combat HARP and scalar weaponry, has Edward ever heard of or done sessions on that type of work? Or results could be dropped anonymously to protect the viewers.
Never anything with harp, but in the QAnon sessions that I did in June of 2018, there was a lot of reference to that kind of technology and its
Like
effect
whether
on people. And I had that also in the ominous feeling sessions as well. That was another thing that came through in those sessions was a like either a Wi-Fi wave or some kind of like maybe even a microwave or something like that coming through. So when last year, when the emergency thing was go on the phones, there were
Mhm.
people who were concerned that there was a frequency that was going to come through there that might have an influence on this certain thing, that I won't mention. Um, I can't say that's for sure, but that was very interesting and kind of a time marker for me as far as those sessions from 2017 because that became an issue in 2023 that was similar to what I was trying to describe in 2017. But in the QAnon sessions, there's a lot of work that related to that kind of um, technology that could have an effect on people.
Yeah, I think because of that, I didn't make sure I turned my phone off that day.
So did I. I put mine in
I doubt
pulled
it
the
was, look, I
batteries
doubt it was
out.
anything. I think they were just testing the national,
Probably, yeah.
response, but
But
good.
I thought it was cool to pull the battery out and put it in a Faraday cage, and just to satisfy myself and
Yeah, you can never be too safe.
put my
Okay, so
tinfoil hat on.
I think you have had something like this. So the question I'm getting is, has Edward ever had a remote viewing occur unintentionally, as in a moment or moments where he begins receiving information while he was otherwise occupying doing something else when it began? I think the answer is yes, but
Yeah.
because I recall that. But go ahead. I don't want to answer for you.
Well, there's probably a bunch of examples in there, but one of them that is interesting, but it's not diabolical or anything like that. but it's fascinating and probably, in my opinion, one of the most interesting and important things that I've ever captured on video in a live remote viewing experience. And with that one, I was contacted by a fella out of the United Kingdom, UK, and he asked me if I'd be willing to work at Target. Now, I never say yes. So this everybody, I never say yes. I always say no. But for this guy, I was like, something seems kind of interesting. I said, okay, I'll work it. So he sends me a Target ID, and that's it. So I go to work on it, videotape them all. They're all done on a whiteboard, and I'm in this DNA. I'm in the DNA and the patterns of DNA and the blueprint of DNA and all that kind of stuff. And I'm drawing it all out. And as soon as I'm drawing it all out, it wasn't DNA anymore. It was musical notes. And I started even going, "Yeah, wait, this is music, man. Da, 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 da," and I'm doing this whole thing. And for 10 seconds or something like that. And finally I was like, get the hell out of here. Back to the DNA. So I got back to work on the DNA. So once I was done with the whole project, he gave me the
Wait,
feedback.
let me stop you there for a second. There's a strange association with is DNA is regular pattern, just like a wave, right? It's kind of constructed like it resonates actually at a certain frequency. I think I want to say it's like 50 megahertz I don't know, but it
Yeah.
resonates. It vibrates at a certain frequency. So the question is, do you think there was any relationship between the music and the vibrational?
I'll tell you what the relationship is with the music, because he let me know once he gave me the feedback. He gave me the feedback, and the target wasn't even something physical. It was an idea that he had for a patent of a DNA marker. And the reason he asked me to remote view it was because he wanted to see if his intellectual property could be safe from a remote viewer. And so what he did was he set up what's called a masking of his intellectual property. And he wouldn't tell me how exactly he set it up, but he did tell me that if I hit on the DNA, it would trigger this other target to pull my attention away from it. And that distractor target was an opera performance where they're singing da, da, dee, da, 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 dee, da, da, just what I was singing in the video. And so when he told me that, one, I was interested in what he was trying to do, which was to protect his intellectual property. But when he told me he had attempted to put a mask on over his actual target, his idea, and that I had actually experienced that, but I had gotten through it, that made it even more interesting to me. Because he said to me, and with this British, way that he said, I tried to mask it, I tried to hide my target, but you cut through it like a hot knife through butter. He said, you know, because I didn't get lost in his distractor target. I
And
got back to
I'm
it.
sure some people did. The problem is he's the one who gave you the coordinates, right?
He is the
If
one. He's the one
somebody
who set it up.
if someone were observing his or whatever that target in space and time is, they would it would be interesting if you ran another experiment where somebody else assigned the target and he still does whatever he does, whether or not they would get the same interference. Did he ever explain to you how he came up with the interference?
He did not. He wouldn't tell me how he did it. He was very specific in saying, "I'm not going to tell you how I set this up." And I was like, "Okay, that's fine."
What did
The
this guy
the
do for a living?
he
Ostensibly,
I can't remember something with, but he was
let's just say
a biologist. He was
ostensibly.
trying to develop a patent. But
Mm-hmm.
here's what's important about that experience is that someone was trying to stop me from remote viewing something. Okay, they were trying to block me from remote viewing something. Their block actually came in, but I was able to get through the block and get back to the remote viewing. Now
Do you think that
there
would
are
distract an average remote viewer
well, here's the
successfully?
thing. The theory is that a viewer can get blocked or masked and they'll never know it. That was the theory. And I don't agree with that theory. I've proven that theory wrong. I cannot say that I'll do it again. Somebody could set something like that up for me again, and I could get distracted and go off onto the secondary
And there could
thing.
also be 3 levels, right? You could just have it even further nested. It'd just be like a Russian nesting doll.
Well, here's what's important about it. There's a theory out there that viewers can be blocked, and I prove that a viewer can get through a block. And not only did I prove it, is not as in the big fish story, it's on video. You can go and watch it. So it's not just me saying, "Oh, I did this thing." It's on
Mm-hmm.
video. The importance the importance of it isn't to pat myself on the back and say, "Oh, look at me, I did this thing." The importance is a viewer can get through anything. There's nothing a viewer cannot perceive and experience. And that's just the way it is, man. If somebody tries to put up a block, because there's a lot of theories out there, they're blocking you, the aliens are blocking you, the government's blocking you, the witches and the wizards and the warlocks, and they're all blocking you. And okay, well, that's a good suggestion. There's the power of suggestion, and I can see how that could influence somebody, but a viewer can get through all of that if they want to. I'm not saying they will every time, but they can. And that's what was most important. That may be one of the most important things I've ever put up was that. So the people who understand what I'm talking about and they look at that and they'll understand the importance of that because it's not parlor tricks or whoa, look at me, I drew this great sketch of the target, ain't I so great, or I'm gonna get all puffed up about it. That was an example of a very important element of remote viewing, of perceiving things that in maybe a couple levels above the average, where people think that they can, they're foolproof. They can influence a viewer away anytime they want to. And so my that's what I have to say about that. That's why that was so important. And I'm glad it's still
Has
up
any
there. Anybody can go see it.
has anyone ever tried to pull a much more crass trick on you? In other words, here's an example. Has anyone ever kind of just sent you a blank target, i.e., it was just nothing, and they wanted to see if you would just come up with some crazy, elaborate description to test you?
No, and that's why if you talk to any viewer who does a lot of remote viewing, they will stay away from that kind of person because they're trying to do you harm. That
Right.
that's viewer abuse, and it's risky enough in general to have somebody else always picking the targets for you. That in itself is always risky. But if you're working with someone who's going to try to abuse you, that's a bad thing to do. That's a bad thing to do.
Yeah, 100%.
That's why
Sometimes you might
that's
not.
why I always
Sometimes you
that's
might
why
not know though. That's why you have
well,
to be
I always
careful.
say
Sometimes you might not
no.
know.
So if I don't know the person and I don't trust the person, I don't work with them. That was the one time that I said, yeah, I'm going to do that, and I'm glad I did it. It's another thing like the ominous feeling ones. Like I was saying, I'm so glad I did that because I easily could have not done it. And that's another example. I could have told that guy, I don't know who you are. I'm not doing anything with you, but I did it, and I'm very glad that I did. Something very important came out of that. So there's an inner guidance system, in my opinion, to uh, that kind of helps me out, to not get abused. That's bad abuse. I wouldn't advise anybody to do that to anybody.
This example is actually a great example of where the frontiers might be in remote viewing. Or it could be the intelligence community figured it out 15 years ago, and we're only just beginning to experience it now. Where do you see, or what other phenomena related to remote viewing, or techniques related to remote viewing, or technologies related to remote viewing, do you think are at the forefront or frontier of this particular discipline?
I think that where we're at now, being 30 years, almost 30 years after the program got
Was disclosed,
defunded
right?
in regards specifically to remote viewing and conditions. Prior to
Hmm.
that, working under blind conditions, not so common. But with remote viewing, that is a very strong, strict part of the protocol. So we've had about almost 30 years of a lot of people putting in time to work on this and develop this and kind of uh, put a pathway out there into this realm that other people can explore too. And so, in my opinion, we've had almost 30 years of gestation of this thing
Hmm.
um, through.
No, we got to slow down on Ed. He'll log back in. I will continue talking. So while I'm at it, I think now is a good time to remind everyone, if you just joined, that you are listening to United Public Radio, and we are talking to skilled remote viewer Edward Riordan, who I hope will be returning to us in a moment once he restarts his videos. But let's open open things up to some more questions, to the extent that I can answer that about remote viewing, and in my at least capacity of having interviewed a lot of remote viewers from the original Stargate program, as well as folks like Des Smith and Edward Riordan. Come on, don't want any dead air here, folks. Don't be shy. I think, look, I think what he's been saying is extremely interesting, because he's kind of the first generation that started using these protocols, and yes, actually, but not formally. I haven't been formally trained. So the weirdest one is, and I don't expect people to believe me, but when I started this channel, 2 years ago, a lot of people from your prior life come forward and tell you things that they normally wouldn't tell you. And I had someone who's not a whistleblower, and they don't obviously don't want to come this out, and I won't say what, but they claim to have seen, in the custody of a government, not U.S., but and I'll just leave it at that, not U.S., and they claim to have physically seen a craft in custody of a particular government. And I just had a very strong feeling. I told them what the color of the floor was, and it absolutely freaked this person out, because it was dead on. It was just very simple. But that would be the weirdest. And there's just been a few others where people ask me to describe something, and I've been able to do it. But again, it's just beginner's luck. It's not. The other weird one was, I wanted to test, a bit of automatic writing out, which David Morehouse said was akin to remote viewing. It looks like, all right, Edward's back. So I'm going to bring Edward back up. These things happen, but I hope I was able to stand in well enough and tap dance, so I entertained you all. All right, here he is. Hey,
Hey,
that's all right,
sorry about
man.
that.
Seamless, seamless. There's
Oh,
only
great.
about there's only about I don't know, 5 seconds of dead air. It seemed to me like
Oh,
it was 30 seconds, but I think to the audience it probably didn't even
oh,
notice it.
okay. Yeah, sometimes the internet drops right in the strangest times. It'll drop. Um,
That's right. As long as it doesn't drop for me, we'll be okay. You don't want to be a guy on the radio. Um,
so,
okay.
um, so we were talking about the where remote viewing goes from here. I think was kind
Yes.
of the gist
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
And
Technologies, techniques, procedures of the future.
yes, and so my perspective of it is, so we have almost 30 years of a lot of remote viewing being done, at least in the public sector. I'm not even adding in of the military guys and all the years that they did it. I mean, just specifically in the public sector. So we have a lot of remote viewing that has been done, and so I often wonder to myself, where it is going to go next. In my opinion, remote viewing is never going to go away. It'll always be here, evolving into what it is, and what it what it really represents. Because in my opinion, the true purpose of remote viewing really hasn't been understood yet. It's been used to spy on Russians or look at space
Right.
aliens, or it's been used for those things. And in my opinion, that is low on the scale of importance for the ability that we have, for what we can do. But those things have gotten attention. That's the level that people can understand it at, and I understand that. But in my opinion, it's moving more into, being able to, kind of, for lack of a better term, um, be more multidimensional in our lives, in our everyday
Hmm.
awareness. Because one of the things that I've been working on in my exploration of the process of remote viewing, through years and thousands of hours of trial and error right here in my laboratory here, is getting into the experience more of the, what I call dimensional sensations,
Hmm.
and the mass or dimensionality of that is perceivable in these remote locations, or these ranges of time and space, and being able to begin to experience them, where the dimensionality of it becomes can become maybe a little bit more solidified, or a little the density of it, the mass may be able to become, fill in a bit more of the mass of it. And that's what I've been experimenting with a lot. um, I call them dimensional sensations. That was the best term I could come up with for it. Also, another word for it that I use is proprioception, which
Hmm.
is, the part of the we have proprioreceptors in our body that send signals to our brain that give us a sense of our where we are in space, if we're upright, kind of where we are, even if we're in a dark room. They call it the sixth sense, proprioception. And that is incorporated in my theory. The process of remote viewing is like proprioception in reverse. So instead of me touching the screen and then those proprioreceptors sending signals back into this cerebral peduncles part of my brainstem, and then
Hmm.
begin to process that through the brain. My theory is that it happens in reverse. So those impulses happen in reverse in the brain, and utilize those known proprioceptive memories to begin to process the information and decode and translate those impulses and stimuluses, that are at that range of time and space, at that quote unquote target. And um, I wonder and theorize the that element or that aspect then it will increase in its, strength, and, be able to where we will be able to experience more of that, stronger, even, not just describe the target. Describe the target remote viewing is what I call data miners. They're data
Hmm.
miners, useful, but that's what I call them. And then I have what I call the explorer, and I resonate more in the explorer realm. Yeah, describe the data miner, describe the target, fine, but I want to explore more. You know, and so that's where my work has gone, in the exploratory realm.
Now, how do you see kind of or reconcile the emergence of artificial intelligence also the emergence of human machine interface like Neuralink. Do you think that's going to be something that crowds out or impedes the development of these natural born capabilities? Or do you think it's going to be a way to enhance, or is it going to kind of be somewhere in between?
In my opinion, I've talked about this quite a few times, is that I'm pro-human and I'm pro-AI. But in the sense that the two, when if the two can be achieved in a balance, then one side needs the other as much as the other will need. They'll need each other, and as long as that's balanced and one is up or down, then we won't kill ourselves, or maybe it won't kill us. But if we can find that balance, in my opinion, that would be a fantastic companion to accelerate our comprehension levels or learning levels. Because, in my opinion, what the AI lacks is that ability for um remote understanding or dimensional sensation, proprioception. It may be programmed to know what those things are, but can it experience? I don't think it can experience anything like that. So if the AI is an understanding with the human being, then it is curious about what we can do, and we're curious about what it can do, and then the two can move very quickly in a balance that it could be very beneficial. That's how I look at it in my fantasy of what would be ideal. Will that happen? Who knows? We might just kill ourselves and start the whole thing over again, and take a couple 100,000 years to get back where we are now. But my hope would be that the two can work together. Now, I did work at Target with transception. You mentioned transception back in
Mm-hmm.
2012, and the the target was to find how a the link between a technology and consciousness, and how that would work, because Jerry was interested in using remote viewing to figure that out so he could patent a human to machine interface. And he I did a bunch of remote viewing on it. Some of the ideas that came in there, he put into a patent that is um, awaiting approval. So it isn't a patent. So I don't know however many viewers are out there who could say my remote viewing, it's in a patent application, not an actual patent yet. How many remote viewers can say that their remote viewing work is in a patent application? If it gets approved and as an actual patent, there will be remote viewing in that. Um, but as far as the consequences of that, where you have human consciousness interacting with the machine consciously, um, it seems like an inevitable progress in my mind if we don't kill ourselves first.
When you're
It
saying your remote viewing is in a patent, are you saying that you
A
remote
patent
viewed future
application. It's an
a
application
patent
still.
application? Are you saying you remote viewed a technology that did not exist that ended up in a patent application? That's what you're saying. You're not just saying
Some of the
it's
elements
remote
in
viewed.
that session
Okay.
did, yeah, yeah.
Okay. So the
Specifically,
other.
how the blood, elements of the blood in the nanotubes um, would work. I don't know all the scientific lingo, but it was a series of sessions on it. Nanotubes being one. There was a 12 atom IBM microchip the size of 12 atoms. That was another one. And the other one, I can't remember what the other one was, but he took elements out of those, and he put them into this thing he wants to patent, and it hasn't been approved yet, but it's in there. So that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool. I'm not opposed to that. I'm not opposed to that.
Well, that's actually enhancing. There's two immediate applications that I've seen in the last 6 months or so that one clearly didn't work. So I actually had a live stream with Dr. Morehouse and Lynn Buchanan, and Lynn Buchanan had three targets, and we had ChatGPT describe the targets. So ChatGPT was not surprisingly 0 for 3. So that application is probably, to your point, it just verifies what you were saying. It also
Yeah,
verified Lynn's intuition. We weren't
yeah.
surprised by that, but we had to do it. The second one I think is actually much more useful. So, and this is a problem, a practical problem that Dr. David Morehouse ran into when he had 70 some remote viewers remote view Rocky Mountain Ranch for the Beyond Skinwalker show. And the issue he had is he had a ton of just, written data with sketches and things like that. If you could ingest all those sessions into an AI algorithm to go map and identify the most common correlations and calculate what statistical significance seeing an owl is. I'm just making that up, but you could have something tremendously powerful with man human or man AI fusion that I
That's
think
right.
could revolutionize. I mean, the intelligence probably already does this, but it would revolutionize remote viewing in a way that it really scale and you could leverage the full capacity of humanity in order to get the right answer.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. Have it process all that remote viewing work and then present it to the analyst.
Right,
Um,
exactly, exactly.
Otherwise, it's daunting task to try to analyze remote viewing. It's a daunting task.
All right, I want to roll the dice on this one. So you've been very circumspect thus far. I'm
Uh-oh.
just warning you. You need to be circumspect
Are we
on.
going into the woo? I think we're going into the woo
No, no, no,
world.
no. We're not going to the
Okay.
woo. We're going into
Okay.
something far worse.
Oh God. Okay.
Okay. Has he and his group ever seen something like a rhymes with Nivel war happening in the United States?
We have, yeah, we have. We've worked some targets like I say we have one the death of the dollar was one of the targets. Like I say, the other one, what will be the catalyst for bringing in a new digital system, which is kind of the same, very close. Um, and we've done quite a few other targets that were specific to dates, future dates here in the United States and in certain countries in Europe as well. And we have seen things that were not very positive looking in our work that could fit under that category of the CW. In fact, those words probably even came up a couple times. Um, so it doesn't really look all that good. I'll tell you one thing that we had a project that we worked last September. It was last September of last year, and it was the target itself was based off of a part of one of my remote viewing sessions for Future Forecasting Group, where that dealt with longevity technology. And
Mm-hmm.
so the people behind the scenes wanted to see if we could maybe delve into what some of those things might be. So we were given that as a target. Of course, we're all completely blind. We have no idea. But the results of that, we were all coming up with the same thing to that target ID, which was a war scenario. All of us. And typically, if maybe one or two viewers may be off, but the other guys are going to be on. We're not all off all the time. Someone's going to hit
100%.
something.
100%.
We were all talking about the same thing. So we did the debrief on it, and that was in it was either late September or early October of last year. And we did the debrief, and we were just, all of us were shaken by our remote viewing sessions. It was very difficult. So October 7th is the Israel Hamas event,
Mm-hmm.
and when that happened, uh, my brain exploded because what was in my remote viewing session, I didn't have people coming in paragliders and all that. There was a lot of other stuff going on in the Mediterranean Sea and stuff like that in my session as well. And what the other guys were getting. When I saw that event happen, it was this is the start of it right here. This is the start to what was in those sessions. And I was having physical reactions to it. I got a big lump on the back of my neck. I was kind of crazy for a couple of days, thinking World War III just started. This is the shot across the bow. This is the start of it, you know. And as all the rest of it continues to unfold, with now all these other countries and Jordan and all these other things are going on, and people coming over our border from those areas that maybe they want to do us harm too. And
And we're not
so
exactly doing anything about it because
it's almost like letting it happen, almost, you know, or
well, I
throwing the
mean,
dice on that one and say, hopefully nothing
yeah,
happens. But
4 million extra votes might be helpful to somebody. I don't know.
well, it was very. We all had a hard time with that one, because we all
Mhm.
felt the same thing. You know, the catalyst for World War III is upon us. I mean, I hate to say that, and I don't want to sound like I'm exaggerating
Well,
either.
look, you're not the only one, right? So Lynn Buchanan did a remote viewing engagement for a major U.S. technology corporation. Um, I'm fully speculating because he did not did not reveal who that client was. But if I had to guess, I'd say Microsoft, given the way that certain former executives there seem to kind of have a bead on what's coming. And what he saw was between 2020 and 2040, there would be a lot of civil unrest. Let's just call it.
Yeah,
But no, like he didn't see any nuclear events, but he saw lots of weather events, right? Um, and his belief was the U.S. and the Russians have their own suites of weather weapons. I know the Russians using a Poseidon missile. It's like a nuclear missile. They could cause tidal action on both
right.
U.S. coasts if they wanted to,
That's right.
without I mean, just detonating it undersea without
Yep,
explicitly using nuclear weapons against populations. But you could have
that's right.
trouble. I'm not saying this is all going to happen. I'm just saying he saw a lot of. He also had a kind of a body count. I'm not going to say that over the radio, but you can all go to my channel and look up Lynn Buchanan and look at some of the episodes where he discussed this stuff.
Sure.
But I mean, given a lot of what we're seeing, with the border kind of completely unsecured, various, I think various governors have sent the National Guard to Texas. You're having issues in, I mean, New York right now. There are rumors of a trucker strike where there was a unfavorable outcome against a particular uh, very very uh, controversial political figure, and there's a lot of folks who are refusing to go to New York City now and unloading goods, and just stuff that's not violent, but stuff that could be extremely disruptive and is a bit concerning. And not only
Yeah.
that, our government doesn't appear to be getting the memo that they need to start ramping up weapons production. Because if you don't do that, you only have one option. You're kind of
I think
tactically.
they're sending a lot of weapons to Ukraine.
That's the problem, right?
Yeah.
We're running down existing stockpiles, but we're not treating it like a national emergency and dramatically ramping this up. Because it's not like World War II where your weapon systems are super simple,
Right.
right? You have, Javelin missile has all sorts of components sourced from all over the United States, and
Yeah.
some of them, when you're talking about um, rare earth metals, right? Because you have to have rare earth metals to have guidance systems and things like that. It takes a lot longer to build these systems because they're a lot more technologically sophisticated. So
Yeah.
it's like we don't have any like. It feels like, and then by the way, did you see Congressman Turner the other day said that there was some serious national security issue? You just put it out on Twitter that should be declassified immediately and shared with the rest of the with our allies and with the rest of the United States
Uh-oh.
because yeah, and then of course he's like, oh, it wasn't,
Did I lose you?
firm hand on the wheel, everything's fine, don't worry about it, I just wanted to get their attention. It's like, so there are rumors that it's related
You
to
still?
Russian
Am I
space
offline?
tech. Yeah, you're still on. You're still on.
God.
You're still on. Edward, I can still hear you.
You back home?
Yeah, I can hear you. Keep
Okay,
talking.
man.
I can hear you the whole time.
Oh, you
You
could?
went fuzzy.
Weird.
Yeah, you went fuzzy. You went fuzzy.
Weird,
But
because
go
you
ahead.
totally froze, and I looked at it looked like I was back offline. Um, but yeah, it's a very concerning thing, and I'll tell you, um, when I was young, back in 1985, I was 16 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and one night I'm asleep, and in an instant, I'm in this complete blackness, but I'm totally conscious, but I'm in
Mm-hmm.
total blackness. And a fraction of a second later, I'm on a street, you know, and I'm looking, pan to my left, and all the buildings are blown up, and the whole place is blown up, and all that kind of stuff. And I'm looking around, for a few seconds, and then I'm back. And I wake up the next morning, and I remembered that experience. And after I remembered it, a download of information came into my mind about the future, and it made me crazy. I was crazy for a while, because the future, what I was being told, what the future was going to be, and what I had seen and what had come into my mind after that were two very, very different things. That the entire system was going to collapse, and the world that we know in 1985 isn't going to be there in the future. And so that was the guiding force in my life from 1985, got me into all the things that I've been into, even remote viewing, is because of that experience. And after this remote viewing we did, right before the October 7th event in Israel, and then what that seemed to represent, and um, to me, seeing it, and then seeing some of the videos of the response in Palestine, which looked exactly like what I had seen in that dream.
Mm-hmm.
And I was telling somebody about this, that for about 3 months prior to that date, every time I would lay down and do some breathing, and do some deep breathing, meditations every day. And for about 3 months prior to that, every time I would go and do that, I would be projecting myself back into the 80s, constant. Every
Mm-hmm.
time I'd be going back, in the 80s, and going through this whole scenario while I'm breathing along to this breathing audio. And after the event in Israel on the 7th of October, that stopped. And so I started to contemplate, if in '85 maybe I didn't go to the future in 1985 into the future. Maybe my future self was sending a message back in time. And that
Yeah,
period of
retro
time that I was
causation.
doing that, I was communicating with myself. So once those things stopped happening after the in October, I went through this whole process of I don't know why else I'm here. This could be it. Maybe I'm going to die now. Mission complete. I think I don't know what else there is to do.
Well,
That's been the
have you
guiding force of my life. Was that thing, and now it's happened. I'm here now. I didn't know
well
what to
ha,
do.
have you sent the message back to your prior self yet?
I don't have to anymore because I caught up and now I know where I am in time. So
Okay.
after a couple of months of relaxing, then the elements of okay, what to do now started to unfold, for me. So now, you know, but it was a very difficult couple of months, October, November, December, where I was like, I could, this could be it. I might have mission accomplished. I might die now, you know. And I wasn't even sure if I could remote view anymore. I was like, maybe I may not even be able to remote view anymore. This could have fulfilled the thing, and So, but I got back on the horse and all that. I got past it, but it's knowing where you are in time and fulfilling a life altering course, and when that comes to fruition and that cycle is closed, a big a big arcing cycle. Moving on from that was was a real challenge, So now it's kind of a different perspective now. What's coming, now that that has been fulfilled, in my opinion.
What do you think is the next shoe to drop? Is this the? I mean, we talked about this on my show when we did a pre-recorded interview. The cyber stuff.
We
Was it
did we
explicitly cyber, or was it something?
we did a target for future forecasts of a cyber attack, and it was a fascinating session because right off the bat, I'm in New York City. You know,
Mhm.
I'm drawing the buildings and the people, and I said, I think I'm in New York. This is gotta be New York City. Okay, well, what's going on? What's interesting here? And the what was interesting about it was that in the buildings and the people on the street had reverted back to an old system of processing information and stuff like that. It was like going back to writing receipts on paper, or ticker tape kind of thing. Um,
But do you
technology
recall if
had
they
gone
had power?
backwards.
Do you recall if they had power in
That was
this
the thing.
particular?
That was the thing. You know, they lost that, and they had to revert back to processing things in an very old way.
Now,
And
are you sure it's a cyber attack? Could it also just be that
that was
truckers
the target.
didn't deliver the
That
coal to the power plants, and
that was the target. The target wasn't will they shut down the power plants because they've made coal illegal. It was to look and see if there was a cyber attack in a specific frame of time, which I can't remember what it
Mhm.
was, maybe 2024, 2025.
It's this year. It's this year, I think, because we at least that's what you talked about on the. There were
Mhm.
three discrete periods, right? One was April, one was in September. I can't remember the third wave, or
Yeah.
if the September one was the third wave. There's either something in between or something at the end.
Yeah. It's kind of like a when, not if scenario. I listened to this sheriff out of Ohio, Sheriff
But by the way,
Jones.
let's both hope that you're
Oh, I hope
wrong.
I'm completely wrong. Yeah,
Right,
with
right.
all of my remote viewing, I always tell like I hope I'm wrong. I want to be. I'm okay with being. I'm a remote viewer.
Because you're not
If
always
you if
right, right?
if you're not
There's
okay with being wrong, you ain't never
right.
gonna make it, man, because you're going to be
Right.
wrong, you know. And but this guy, Sheriff Jones, I think was his name, out of Ohio. He just did a conference about a week ago, and he was in um, like a some kind of a 3 day long thing with FBI and all these things, and telling him what's going on. And he came back to kind of spill the beans, but he spilled the beans in front of the cameras. And he's saying they are under cyber attack every single day, even in his little town there in Ohio.
Mhm.
They're trying to get into the infrastructure and sabotage even them. He said 3 times a day they're getting attacked by China, and I think he might have said Iran or something like that.
Or
Every single day.
if not attacked, just seeded with worms that can
Yeah.
be remotely detonated
He
at
said they
any
want to
time.
get in. They want to take down our infrastructure, and throw us into chaos. Those are his words, not mine.
Right.
But
By the way,
when he's
this is not a secret, right? Like we do the same thing. Like we're not, it's not one sided, right? But
yeah, but it's one thing to talk about it, but it's in my mind anyway. It's another thing to hear him say it. Yeah, listen, I'm telling you, this is happening to us all the time, every single day. This is happening to us. And then it's like, ooh, that's not, conspiracy, late night talk show talking about it. This is the sheriff talking about it. So it's a concern. It's concerning. You know,
and this is you think that this is associated with the civil unrest that you may have seen? You don't have to be CW, right?
in that session, the cyber attack session,
Hmm.
um, my
It sounds like it was
perception,
orderly. It sounds like it was relatively orderly, actually, based on what you were
the civil
describing.
unrest element.
No, 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 no. The When you were talking about people engaging in transactions, they were writing things down on paper, and it sounds relatively more orderly than one might expect, at least from me.
Well, the the feeling of it was that, and I'm trying to remember this exactly from my session, was in the realm of 60 to 70% of the infrastructure is down. Um,
Okay.
that's
By the
bad.
way, for folks who are just joining us, you're listening to United Public Radio. I'm interviewing next generation remote viewer Edward Riordan.
So, but like I say, I hope I'm wrong.
Hmm.
If I'm wrong and nothing like that ever happens, I'll be happy. I'll be happy.
Yeah, yeah. It's a good thing remote viewers are not 100%. I mean, if they were, it would be a very,
It'd be
you know,
crazy.
we'd have a heads up, but might,
It'd be crazy. Yeah.
well, I don't think I don't know if it's entirely because it would change behavior, right? It would absolutely change behavior, so that might precipitate some other effect,
Good.
right? So,
Definitely.
uh, well, I mean, we still have about 8 minutes. So, is there anything that we didn't discuss that you wanna kind of explore?
Let's see.
Probably something to give people a little
A little
hope,
hope.
right? Yeah, a little hope. It ended a positive
um,
note.
well, cryptocurrencies are up. So if anybody has any investment in those, they're doing well. Um, it seems that the crypto, as was suggested to me as well, is part of the transition out of the fiat system and into a more digital system. Cryptocurrency plays a
Or it's
role in
just a
that.
mechanism by which the intelligence community raises black budgets and things like that are outside of the
Absolutely, man.
you know
Absolutely. Nobody goes without getting. They're going to get their cut one way or another. But as it happens, cryptocurrencies are up for now, so that's a positive thing for those who are invested in cryptocurrencies. I mean, on a positive note, I mean, what's positive for me is doing remote viewing and exploring the process of remote viewing. That to me is human potential, and getting deeper into the dormant potentials that we have inside of the human being, And in my opinion, it's limitless. I mean, the things that we can do is like I've said this for years. Remote viewing and describing the quote unquote target is like kindergarten training wheels
Right.
stuff compared to what our potential is. Um, and in my opinion, our potential is getting a bit of a boost. And in my opinion, AI can assist in that as long as we don't go, crazy and turn it into the Terminator or something like that. Best case scenario, it could be a great companion for that. And so I look at it that way, and in that, I'm very optimistic about that because the potential of the human being is incredible. It's limitless. What we can do, the dormantness. We're dormant in a lot of ways, and in my opinion, that's starting to get cracked open, and I'm very happy about that.
Now, if people want to remote or learn how to remote view, what would your advice be? I know you talked a little bit about they could just go to your website and or your YouTube channel and just start watching the videos to get a good sense for it. What else can they do to unlock this capability? I mean, this was something
Well,
that basically everybody can do, right?
yeah, pretty much. Now, just like with anything, some people are going to, do better than other people.
Right.
Just like if you're playing basketball or whatever.
Yeah, not everybody
Um,
can be Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, right?
yeah, that's right. But if you got arms and a working physical body, you can throw a basketball. Um, but luckily for people in today's era, there are a lot of resources available for people online. You can take courses. There are some free courses up there that if people want to try, you can download the military CRV manual and read through that if you wanted to try to comprehend that yourself. You can sign up for classes with people and get training with people. Future forecasting group, we do offer training there and several different styles of remote viewing. People can That's an option for people. So there's a lot of options for people out there. Excuse me, to begin to explore that within themselves and see what they can do and go from there. Why not try it? It's there. Try it and see what you can do. You're more than likely you're going to surprise yourself if you put some time and energy into it. It's an amazing thing. It really is the potential of the human being. So if you want to explore that, remote viewing is one of those things to show you something that is really beyond normal quote unquote reality of what um, you may think we're capable of. It's amazing.
What was this? That'll be the last question for you. Unless it goes dark. If it goes dark, then you could just stop me.
Uh
What's the strangest target you've had?
oh. The
I keep saying target. I know
strangest.
my apologies.
I
It's
understand
just
what you
much
mean.
easier. It's much easier
I know.
to
I
keep
know.
track
It's
of.
it's an easy generic
It's a
term.
shorthand, right?
The strangest was probably one of my favorites, which was the Xenon One
Mm,
detector, and why it was so strange and why I love that session so much is because there is the probability that I had perceived a weakly interacting massive particle, which is what the
a
xenon
wimp.
detector, a
A
WIMP,
wimp. Right.
and
It's
that's
literally
that's
called that. It's not.
they're
We're not.
called a
We're not
WIMP.
making fun of it. Yeah,
That's right,
wimps. Right.
and that's what they're detecting with that device under that mountain, and that was what I was asked to remote view, and and I did, and I described something inside of that chamber, and had my own little experience with it, and I think that there's a probability that it was a weakly interacting massive particle that I saw.
Because they're very rare,
That's right.
right? They're extremely rare. Correct.
They're very difficult to detect. They're always
Mm.
zipping through. They may be zipping through you right now, but they're very, very difficult to detect, and that's why they had to build a laboratory underneath a granite mountain, fill it with xenon, uh, and do all the other things that they had to do to in an attempt to try to capture, or not capture one, but detect one zipping through. And that was when I was asked to remote view. Thank God, I loved it. It was amazing. And of course, I'm completely blind to the target. But after I got the reveal, and that was when the Dustin Newcomb's target. After that, I
Hmm.
was talking to him, and we had to contemplate whether or not by me remote viewing it, quote unquote, did I influence it in some way? Did I influence the machine in some way? I don't know, but it was a great thing to contemplate. What if it was one of those great what if things to contemplate? I've reached out to the Xenon people that work there, sent them the videos, and the response back is, I don't know what the hell I'm looking at here. They don't know what the hell I'm talking about. You
Well,
know,
if you look at pictures of this machine, like if you saw a picture of it, you couldn't describe it, right? If you had to describe a picture, like you looked at the picture, it would be because it's just massive and it's hard to visualize, right? As you're because I looked at it after I interviewed you
yeah,
on one of our sessions, and I
yeah,
I like I wouldn't be able to describe that because there's just so many gears and
I know, I know.
weird elements of it, and
Yeah,
so anyway.
yeah, fascinating. I love that they built that thing. I love that someone came up with the concept. I love that they put all the time and the energy and the money into developing and building that thing. And I love that human beings are so endlessly, obsessively curious that we build things like that. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And that's human. That is the human being. We are insatiably curious. And sometimes we lead ourselves in the wrong way, and we do a lot of bad things, but we do good things too. And we want to understand. We just want to know. We want to understand things, and there's no stopping that. Without killing us all. You know, we are just insatiably curious creatures.
All right, my friend. It has been absolutely riveting, and I hope the audience enjoyed. Looks like they did a
I hope
lot.
so.
So
I hope so.
yeah, so it was a pleasure, and we'll to many more of these discussions.
Thanks
Always
so
good
much,
talking to
Sean.
you,
It's
Edward.
always great. Always great being on your show, and thank you so much for inviting me on.
Thank you, everyone. Good night, good luck, and have a fantastic beginning of the week. Talk soon.